Hello and welcome to episode 4 of ETN's The Latte Lounge. Here we're discussing one or two things that have made a difference in our lives, and normally at this point we're talking about health and wellness, animals, that kind of thing. The ET thing will be coming in at some point as well. At the moment, what I wanted to tell you and share with you, it's a really interesting story. Some years ago, I went to the Philippines, and I went to meet with psychic surgeons and healers, and I went with a group of wonderful people. My lady who started the group was called Heidi Jacobi, and she is absolutely wonderful in Germany these days. And so I actually, as I said, went twice, and the Philippines is a very interesting place. It's one of those places that if there is anything that you have just under the skin that you have not dealt with, or that is, and that's psychological, physical, emotional, spiritual, every which way. And if you have not dealt with it or you're suppressing it, then if you go to the Philippines, it acts like a poultice, and that, whatever it is, will manifest. Anyway, that is a little bit another story. And I just wanted to say that when I did this visit to the Philippines, I had, we went to a wonderful place, and I still can't remember if it's called, hi Penny, called 1,000 Islands or 100 Islands. And so we were dropped off, and the boat dropped us down. We had a lovely time, but I just kind of wandered off by myself. And then I suddenly saw the little jetty where we'd been released from to go and explore the islands. The 2 or 3 guys, can't remember now, were sitting there, and they were laughing. And when I looked down to see what they were laughing at, to my horror, there was a cat, and it had got a implement or a stick of some kind shoved up its anus. And these guys thought this was hysterical. Well, I wonder how they would like it. So I just went ballistic. All sense of non-judgment and anything else kind of went out the window. And I certainly let them know that I really was very unhappy with that situation. So anyway, somehow, I can't remember how she came about, but there was a nun there. And the nun, kind of came in as an intermediary, and she came to explain to me that they didn't understand why I was so cross, why I was so upset. And I said, that's torturing another being, that's harming it. What don't they understand? And gosh, humanity, eh? So anyway, she calmed the whole scenario down. She was quite worried it could have got out of hand. I don't know what would have happened. There was just me and these guys, and the rest of my group was away exploring wherever. And anyway, so we got back. So we had our trip, and then we went back, and we were staying on that trip on the beach. There were some, they weren't as smart as chalets, but they were like beach huts, and they were very, very primitive. So no protection, there was no security, nothing like that. It was just literally, I think there was a little cookhouse, and that was it. And during the next couple of days or so, we went to visit this beautiful soul called Matthew. Matthew Lagman, I think his name was. I'll have to check that surname. But anyway, Matthew, who was the most beautiful soul. And he was a healer, and he was the village healer. And what he used to do was to hold an A4 piece of paper up against the body, or wherever he perceived that you had a problem. Now, he did this in his little church or chapel, and he was very, very cognizant of the spiritual aspect of his gifts. And indeed, before he started, it was with lots of prayer and reverence for what he, was going to be able to share with us. So that was absolutely astonishing. And he was as poor as a church mouse, as many of the Filipinos were in that area. But I can't tell you what a gorgeous people they were. They were so kind, so sweet, so joyful. I've never seen so many smiles with, nothing virtually on their backs. Anyway, that was beautiful. Then what happened was, about probably within the week, so another, say, 2 or 3 days later, all of a sudden, Matthew shows up at our little encampment with, do you know what, I forget his name, the interpreter. And he had made his own way there with no money. And we were a good few miles. I mean, we'd hired a jeepney to get us about the island and to meet up with people. And Matthew had come and he had a meeting with Heidi, myself, and 1 or 2 of the others who'd been quite proactive. I was doing meditations for the group if they wanted and that kind of thing. And he told us that he'd had a vision, like a dream. And he saw our little encampment being attacked by men with guns coming over the waters, because we were right at the sea's edge. And he said that these were the same men that I'd had this altercation with about the cat, and who thought that, I and my group, needed a lesson being taught, and they were going to deliver it, they thought. Anyway, so what Matthew said, and again, I can't stress enough how wonderful, what a beautiful soul he was. He came of his own free will. He doubtless had other things to do, but he wanted us to be safe. And he spent the next, I can't remember, it's 3 or 4 days with us, up until, because he knew the date when they were coming in, and it was toward the, within the 3 or 4 days. And he said what he was going to do was to do a series of ritualistic prayers, and that he would need 3 or 4 of us, and I was one of them, to join him to give it energy, to give it real welly, if you like. And so that's what we did. Morning, noon and night, we worked together, and we let Matthew lead, and I don't know all that we were doing except the highest and the best and all the rest of that good stuff, and protection for the whole group, although I was the focus. And anyway, the day came. And as the day began, this humongous wind got up. I mean, it had been tranquil, beautiful all the time. And then all of a sudden, this massive wind got up, and it remained. And one of the lovely older German ladies passed me by, and she said, "Yeah, Joanne, look, no boats landing today." So that was their window of opportunity gone, because we were about to leave our encampment as well, if not that day, then the next day. And so we were free from danger. And I have to say to this day, thank you to those in the Philippines and Matthew. It's probably not on this planet now, but what a wonderful thing. But, just again to bring in this sensitivity to animals, and also the wondrousness of humanity as well, because we experienced that fantastic spiritual interaction from a human angel. So that was wonderful. So I had to share that with you girls. And Penny's just joined us. Thanks, Penny. And Pat is somewhere. Let me see where Pat is. Hi, Pat.
Hello.
So I just wanted to share the animals subject again. And Pat, maybe we were speaking about the different ways that animals are seeming to communicate. And we were just talking about Anna Breytenbach. And I wonder if you could share with us your story, because you've also got a personal link with the animal in another way in your bedroom.
Oh, in my bedroom, yeah.
Yes.
Shall I go and get it? Yes, I did. Go on, sorry.
No, I just said I think it would be lovely for people to hear, the wonderful things that other people are doing. If, we know you're an animal communicator, but maybe other people haven't heard of, say, Anna Breytenbach. Some will who know about the field, but maybe they don't. So I thought you could share that beautiful story about Diablo.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's quite famous, I think, on YouTube, but some people might not have seen it. And it's about 6 years old, I think, the story. So it's still on YouTube. But basically, it was about a black leopard, I think it was,
Panther, I think, was he?
And he'd had a very unfortunate. He'd been used in it called Diablo, and he'd been used in a zoo very badly, treated very badly, and then eventually, fortunately, found himself in a sanctuary where he was going to be very well looked after, and was very well looked after. And the guy who ran this sanctuary was very, very knowledgeable about all big cats, but this cat was so terrified that he was just on the defensive all the time, and actually bit him on occasion. I think he had to go to hospital, and it was not looking good because they just couldn't think what to do to get his trust.
Yeah.
And somebody suggested to him that they contact Anna, and he honestly thought it would not work. He just could not understand how a human could make that connection, how a human could talk to an animal, and how a human could hear what was coming back. He just understandably just couldn't get it. But he was at his wit's end, so he invited her, and she came, and she has a very, very quiet presence. If you watch the YouTube, you'll see what I mean. So she sat with him, and she started to connect with him, and she told him that he was safe and he would not have to perform any tricks. They weren't going to ask him to do anything that he wasn't happy with. He was here to be restored, basically. And slowly, as you watch the film, as she is talking to him and reassuring him, his eyes start to drop. And so she at that point, she has built a bridge of trust between herself and him, which was pretty remarkable because he was very vicious, through fear.
And he also, as I seem to remember the story, Pat, and correct me if I'm wrong, he wouldn't actually even come out of his cage, would he? He'd got a big cage. But and this was at a sanctuary, wasn't it, in South Africa, I think?
And he had a huge area outside. But no, he hadn't been out for 6 months. He just stuck himself in a corner. It happens the same with ordinary cats, in a cattery, even when they're in a pen. They're frightened, they just go straight into a corner. And, because they're just scared. And anyway, she was continuing to talk to him, and he asked her a question and said he was worried about 2 cubs that had been next door to him in the zoo quarters. And of course, the sanctuary owner and his wife knew about that story. So they said, how the hell did she know that? Because they knew that there was no way that she would have known that. So that was a bit of a breakthrough.
And a corroboration, wasn't it, for the owner to know that she was actually communicating?
Yes, and then she checked, and they said no, they were fine. They were rehomed safely. So she was able to reassure Diablo, as then called. And then the next thing I think he said, I might not have got it in sequence, but was that he didn't like his name because of the negative connection with that name. So they renamed him Spirit.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It's a beautiful story, and I think she then went to, Anna then left to leave him to everybody to digest what had just happened, I think. And within a couple of hours, he was out of his enclosure and wandering around quite peacefully, and the owner was able to connect with him and speak to him. And then the bridge was built.
Mm. And I think also he was saying that he had a very good relationship with his other big cats, of which he had quite a few. But then I think Anna Breytenbach did some more work with him, with those cats. And he said the relationship got even better, if you could believe it.
Yes, I think she came back later in the day to see how he was doing. And I think, everything was going well. And so he spent some time connecting with as he's now called Spirit, and then eventually went to one of Anna's animal communication courses and actually learned the process.
Yeah, lovely.
And I think he and his wife did, and I think they actually started teaching some of the staff as well. So the word spread, so he really played a huge role in awakening humans. So although it was awful that he had to go through that, his role, actually, as I see it, was to bring everybody's attention, because through his behaviour, to the fact that animal communication does exist.
Absolutely. And it's quite interesting because the owner of the sanctuary, again, if I'm remembering correctly, he was a retired policeman, I think. So he was very used to dealing with all kinds of, difficult situations. But before Anna came up, I mean, it was, I don't know what they were planning to do with then Diablo, now Spirit, if he could even keep him because of his,
I don't think they could have kept him. It wouldn't have been fair to keep him under those circumstances. They would have had to euthanize him. There was no other route. I mean, they'd hit the wall, and that's what happens. So that's why it's even more important that humans learn to communicate.
And isn't it lovely, how, I mean, she's done a lot of things. There's lots of YouTube videos and that kind of thing, and I've looked at one or two other animal communicators, and it is just beautiful, absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And Pat, you got your own version of Spirit, didn't you? You came across a wonderful big
I don't think I've been here very long, actually, and I was thinking about animal communication, which at that time had taken a bit of a back seat because I was doing a lot of writing. And I walked past a charity shop just down the road from here, and this huge black leopard in the window, and I thought, oh no. And I immediately remembered the tape, and I came back actually and revisited the tape and thought, this is too weird, and it had 2 cubs. And I stood there and I thought, I seem to remember there were cubs in that story.
Yes, there were.
Yeah. But it had 2 cubs, so I went down the next day, still in the window, because I said to the universe, if I'm meant to have it, you need to keep it for 24 hours. And they did. And I went back, and the guy in the charity shop, I said, how much is it? He said, £3.50. I can't think of it.
Huge thing as well. It goes along the whole of the back of the settee, doesn't it? It's massive.
Yeah.
It's a good cushion.
Now. And I did wonder whether my cats might freak out when I brought it in, but they just jumped on him. Somebody to play with.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. So, Pat, I don't know whether there's anything else. I know you've got to leave us earlier, so I don't know if there's anything else you want to share on the animal communication side, or anything else. I mentioned the a CC. Oh, what was it called? That
the
group or
animal. I can't remember the CC organisation. Was it
as if it's like St. Francis of Assisi. There's some organisation now. I don't think they also teach. I'll look those out and put those up on the at the end of the video. Yeah. So and also Anna Breytenbach's. Is her website animal?
It's animalspirit.org. It's quite simple. Animalspirit.org.
So
the only other thing I wanted to mention, because I think it's important when you're talking about animal communication, is that people don't understand it in the ways that it works. So I started to jot down a few notes, because animals communicate to us via signs. And we know that because of the pigeon saga. We've had 3 visits of pigeons, and it often happens in similar ways when at crucial events in people's lives, sometimes in funerals, and you might get a butterfly on the coffin, or they'll get the person will see some sightings. But I had a personal experience of when I had a couple of years when I didn't have any cats at all, and I couldn't have cats at the place I was living at, and I sort of asked, said, oh, it would be really nice to get the signs from my 2 cats that had died. And I just stripped the bed, and I'd made it all up with fresh bedding, and I went out for half an hour and came back in, and this was a bright yellow bedspread, and right in the middle of it was one black whisker, cat whisker. And I stood there and looked at it, and I thought, I don't believe this, because I know that there'd never been a cat in that house. It was a new flat. It was just really weird, so there's
Lovely,
different ways. And I think you had a bit of an experience, didn't you, yesterday with your...
Oh, yeah.
You felt that your dog had we'd been out on a walk, hadn't we? And we'd watched the dog, and you said that's like Santa.
Yeah.
And then the next day you went, oh, I think...
Yeah, it was true. I was just minding my own business, washing up, and I had a beautiful Battersea rescue dog. And for people who don't know what Battersea is, it's a cats dogs rescue in London, very, very famous, very large as well. And back in the day when I was first with my other half at the time, we got this beautiful puppy, crazy puppy, and later on a couple of cats from Battersea as well, Battersea Dog and Cats Home. And anyway, so little Xanta grew up to be a cross between a border collie and Pooh Bear, really. And he was so sensitive, and he was very, very loving, quite an independent little soul. But it was as if he was suddenly there, so much so that I'd almost forgotten that he wasn't anymore with me. He died a lot of years ago, and it was as if the energy of him was so close, I almost went down to put my hand to touch him, to stroke him.
Yeah.
And I suddenly thought, oh, wow, that was very, very intense, momentarily wise, intense in a nice way, that he made himself known to me. And he doesn't normally do that. So thanks, Santa.
That's all right.
Yeah, so that was lovely.
Just last question for Pat. Did you go on a course yourself, Pat, to
Yes, I went on several actually. I did. I went in for an introductory workshop to see how I felt about it, and I just loved it. As soon as I walked in the room, I just sort of thought, this is for me. And then I joined a chap called James Hunt. No, that's wrong. He's a racing driver, isn't he?
James Hunt, yeah. I think we did mention him last week, though I don't think I put anything on the...
Anyway, he created the trust technique, and he did a course for professional animal communicators, which was over two long weekends. So it was about a 6-day course. Mm-hmm. And that covered everything from obviously learning how to communicate, but it covered lost animals and all sorts of different issues that you have when you're dealing with clients, particularly because it's a very sensitive area to deal with, depending on what the case is about. So James French, what's it now?
Oh,
James
yeah,
French.
lovely. Yeah.
So yes, I did that, and then I went on to do some case studies for about 3 months after that, and then launched myself off into the unknown, and it was
into the unknown. Oh.
the unknown realm.
I think, as you were saying again, and it's just interesting just to reiterate from last week, that the way or the depth of communication that animals seem to be coming through with now is a little bit different to how it has been in the past. And I'm not quite sure, I haven't had an experience of it myself, so I don't know, what that might mean. But from our chats, I just gather that it's a lot more intense information, deeply personal to the owners as well, not just about the animal. And often I know we did touch on it last in episode 3, but I just think that's quite interesting as well, that there's an intensity in the animal communication, and much more, sort of cutting through, isn't it, really? Cutting through the wood for the trees.
I think it's cutting through, and they're making themselves known, in all ways. I mean, we've seen animals, appearing on our planet as we've been in lockdown, because the humans haven't been there. And I think there was it was sheep or something trotting along one of the high streets in Wales, and eating all the people's rose bushes. It's like, where are the humans gone? So I think that, and also the whales and, the sea life seems to be coming closer into shore. There's more sightings. So in that way, they're coming closer. In another way, at a deeper level, they're coming closer into the human heart emotionally.
That's important.
And they're getting right in there. There's no holds barred, because they know that we have to change, and they want to help us open up to that change.
Yeah.
And that means often that we have to change. So,
yes.
In some way that we have to become more aware, or we have to change something in our lifestyle. I mean, they often talk about lifestyles and what we do, and they think we're nuts. Because we just run around all the time. Or, we get irritable with them, and then they wonder why they misbehave, because they react, don't they? If you shout at an animal, it makes it nervy and jumpy, and it doesn't feel peaceful. So it is changing quite dramatically. So most of the communications I'm doing now, they're helping their owners not only find sometimes a new pathway in life, but giving them a glimpse of perhaps the mission that person might be thinking of doing, or giving them clarity on what it might be.
Yeah.
Or even assisting them. I mean, like I've got a lot of cats and a lot of animals in spirit, and I use probably 2 or 3 of those on a regular basis, because they've told me they want to be part of it.
Yeah, so they come in, just to give people an idea, like spirit guides. Well, they are spirit guides in animal form. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, they come in to help in the same way that, people will contact a medium to connect with human spirits on the other side. It's the same with animals.
Yeah.
And
lovely, Pat. Thank you for sharing that. Penny, I don't know if you've got any other questions you want to ask Pat before she needs to go into her thing.
Yeah, quite a few years ago now. I remember when I first moved up to the lakes, really about 2000. I was very, very interested in animal communication, and I did go on a course, and it was this lady, Amelia Kincaid.
Oh yes, the American lady.
Yeah. And she did amazing.
She's great.
The Isle of Man.
Yes, that's right.
And it was incredible. It really was very, very good. I recommend it.
Yeah, she is amazing.
Yeah, and but when I came back, obviously with so many other things going on, I knew that it wasn't my sole mission to go along that pathway, but it is absolutely incredible. And I found out as well, with the dowsing, I can, douse animals, because a friend of mine who has passed away now of cancer. Tell me if I told the story last week or the week before, because I've got a head full of stories, as you know, Joanna.
Yeah.
She had a beautiful dog. It was her baby. It was a Sheltie called Dylan, and it was ill. And she took it to the vet, projectile vomiting, and the vet couldn't find really anything. They put a camera into the dog's stomach, couldn't find anything, and my friend was so worried. So I thought, I've never really doused a dog, and I found out that it had got cancer, but it was further down in the digestive system, and I couldn't tell my friend. I couldn't tell her. I said, he's got a precancerous condition. What are you giving him to eat? Fine. What are you giving him to drink? Tap water. I said, and she got one of these decked digital electronic cordless telephones, which was pushing out frequencies that were very damaging, even those few years ago. I mean, the worst now. And the dog was picking up, obviously, sensitive. They are, it's purebred, lovely sheltie. The chlorine and whatever else was in the water, and it was causing to be, for this tumor to appear, which will only appears, as in humans, when the body's pH balance is wrong and there's toxins in the body. So anyway, the poor thing actually had to be put down on Christmas Eve, and the cordless phone went out the window. They chucked it away and got the landline, which helped. So she's never had, still she actually ended up with, but she took so many prescription drugs. We won't go down that route, will we? But anyway, it was quite a first for me, and a little lesson. And when I was watching television, I don't watch now, the super vet, Noel Fitzpatrick.
Oh, amazing guy.
Oh, lovely. I've got his book. Waterstones were good, selling it half price, £20 book for 10, hardback. His autobiography, amazing. And he wears his heart on his sleeve, and the Irish chap with all the hugs and so on. And I thought then, how many animals and dogs and that are coming in with cancer? That shouldn't happen. So, if anybody's, going to have a look at the Latte Lounge, I hope, check that the animal is not given tap water. It'll always have outside water, that's right, isn't it? Animals will always try and get puddles and drink out of puddles and whatnot, and ponds, and also watch the frequencies, which I hope, if we go back to the programmed clear quartz crystal, that the animals, when they're sleeping as well, which most animals, companion animals, sleep in the house and not outside, or they could still program the crystal to protect the kennel or outhouse or whatever, if the animal's outside, or the rabbit hutch, or they're all important, aren't they? Our companion creatures are fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely lovely. Okay, Pat, thank you very much. I know you.
Okay. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. Lovely to hear about Anna as well, and be reminded of Diablo, who didn't like his name and wanted to be called Spirit. And I think if you don't like your name too, change it. Which is very important. Okay, Pat, I think you just you can just stop your video and mute, and then just click off. I think that's how that goes for you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.
So, Penny, I've been talking about, these, I'm going to put them on actually. So these are, get a bit closer, these are my pinhole glasses. And I don't know whether because we were talking, you've got them as well. I'm just going to hold these to the camera. I don't know whether they can see that. Oh yeah, there you go. Look, you can see these little pinholes, and there's a reason for me showing these to you. And what it is because that I like most of us, I use my eyes a lot. Of course, we all do, but I mean, I'm on the computer, I'm reading, I'm doing a lot of things, editing, and it's very, very heavily energetic. And when I sometimes like to read before I sleep, and I find that I'm so tired, but I really, really do want to read, that sometimes I notice my vision declining quite measurably. And I started buying these little £1 and £2 glasses readers from Poundland and wherever, and then I started using these guys, and I'm telling you, and these are only about 99p or $1.99 from the internet, and that's all they are. They're plastic. And what this does, what they do, these little pinholes, the cone of the eye gets shortened, the muscle of the eye behind the eye gets shortened when we just focus on one spot all the time, which we do, it's normal. But these make the eyes work quite hard. And I was really quite worried about my vision. I thought, oh God, I'm not going down the route. I am not going to do it of wearing glasses full time. So what I did was use these for a week, about 20-minute stints. And I tell you what, guys, these absolutely changed my reading ability, in as much as the text would get very, very small without the glasses and without the readers. And then with these on, the text would actually get bigger, as if it was being magnified. There's no glass, it's just literally their holes. And so it was changing the way my eyes were operating. And then after about a week, my eyes completely readjusted. So when I had them on or off, the text looked the same, which was fantastic. And that lasted for ages. And then my sister, a long time ago, bought me these as a joke present. Well, you can probably see they've got some pinholes in there. And yes, it does look a bit like a Darth Vader outfit. And you can see that's, who is it? It's Home Shopping Selections. I have actually tried to get another pair of these things, but I want to show you the other side. So these things here are just foam, which is just to protect your face. And this chappy here is a little battery pack. You can probably hear that. So it vibrates high or low. And then, guys, these little dots, those dots there are not dots, they are magnets. And there happen to be 13 of them all around. And when I'll try this for you again. So, and you can Velcro it, girls and boys. Velcro it. There we go. Super. I mean, and I'm telling you what, when I put the little battery thing going, I can feel the reverberation. Of course, it's not very much. But what happened when I was super tired and my eyes felt very, very compromised, I could actually feel literally against my skin, but not on my skin. So my etheric body, I would say, as if all up here and here and here was being massaged, as if all that congestion was being cleared, and it was being done in a circular fashion like this. I mean, to such an extent that I would take them off and check, is there a hand on my face? No, it was just these little guys. And you don't have to have, see it? You don't have to have the battery on. It still works. Now, I know they look very funny, but who cares? I'm just in reading my book with those on. But anyway, so I couldn't find these again. So what I did, I bought some neodymium magnets from the internet, and I thought I would try adding them to these. So I've got some teeny weeny ones. There's 3 there, you can see those teeny weeny ones, and then those bigger ones. So I've got 13. I replicated the number. I didn't know if it meant anything, and I've just put them where I could. They actually come, the bigger ones, with a sticky thing on, so you can stick them to things. Very handy. So I haven't yet road tested them enough to know if there is a difference with the magnets as opposed to these guys. So anyway, I can't find these guys anywhere. If I could find them, I would buy another pair, because it's just such a great thing to have. So I'll let you know if these work. Well, they work anyway, but the magnets seem to give a rapid response to the healing. That's the thing. So that's very interesting. So guys, even if you're not doing a lot of reading, but you're doing a lot of studying, a lot of looking at the computer, a lot of looking at anything where you do it for periods on end, I can tell you guys, these are amazing. And talk about effective, but you do have to stick at it. It's a bit of a faff when you're reading a book, because you do kind of also, I find myself moving my head ever so slightly, because the pinholes are what they are. They're pinholes, and so there's portions that you have to move your head because it's in the way of the word, but also it also makes your eyes work a lot harder. So there we go. That is my fantastic tip, because honest to God, I also did pass this on to 1 or 2 other people, well, many people, but 1 or 2 tried it, and one person who's I don't know, they're now about 80. I mean, who cares about the age, right? But we are programmed to believe that at certain times things are supposed to, start failing, because we're not normally proactive. But they had the same beneficial effect to the same dramatic level that I did. So it's not just me and it's not just them. So you can try this yourself. Be proactive about your health, guys. Find these things, like apple cider vinegar and all of that kind of stuff. Amazing. So Penny, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that. We're actually going to start talking about something else in a little minute, but it's interesting.
Yeah, you're right about looking after our health, Joanne, because it's so important that we are the best we can be, because there's been such a long-term attack on us, which a lot of people find it difficult to accept, especially as they'd never harm anything themselves, and a lot of people now on the planet, what I call the crystals, the second wave after the indigo crowd, which I was one of.
So when you say crystal, you're talking about a genre of spiritually developed human being.
Yeah, who answered the call of Earth to come incarnate on this planet because of what was going on, and we are, extremely valuable. It's so valuable, it's unbelievable to see how the dark ones are still trying to hammer us down. This is one of the reasons why it's so important for our health to be top notch. And as you say, Joanna, which I agree with, it doesn't matter how old you are.
No, it does not at all, not at all. So Penny, if we are not given grace here to continue in this tranche of the session, then we will pick up immediately afterwards and just continue. So if the screen goes blank, don't worry, I'll get back to you, and we'll get back on Zoom ASAP. Tonight, same time, same place, I mean. So just in case it does that, just so you know, I'm going to give you a call back, because it's telling me that I've only got about 3 minutes left. So yeah, so we'll just start again. So the other thing that that you mentioned to me, which is very interesting, Penny, was about copper, the element of copper in us, and that you felt, or you found, your research told you that it was quite important.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was copper 1, copper 2 and copper 3.
Oh, neither did I. That's news.
And it's the copper 1, I think, that's really needed. And when I did some checking of myself, I hadn't got any, so I needed to take possibly a supplement or some. A friend of mine who lives near Barrow in Furness is created something called mitocopper, which can go into a solution like colloidal silver. He's also doing silver as well. Now I will give him a ring, and he's got a young family, so he's busy, and he's working as well. And find out a bit more about that, because the silver that he's created, I say created, obviously it's made into this powder that's just so powerful. And he's got a laser that when this tiny little, perhaps a little tiny bit on the end of your finger goes into quite a substantial amount of spring water in a jar, you'd think it wouldn't have changed it, but he puts the laser on and it's in there, and he's doing the same with the copper. So I will come back on that.
Okay. So do you know what the differences are then, Penny, between 1, 2 and 3?
No, I don't know. That's okay. On my to-do list for me.
Well, that's just really interesting, because I know from when the guys were doing their dowsing, when I say the guys, I mean the biolocation team, they were able to identify through dowsing different blood types, and also through their aspiration, how they lived and breathed. I just introduced Penny without the record button, but let's just say we are going down the rabbit hole. Here we are, going down the rabbit hole, talking about the Atlas correction and a little bit more later on. Sorry about that, Penny.
The book again. Correction.
Yes, thank you. Correction of the Atlas, Fundamental Discovery or Hoax. And that's by Perrin, George Perrin. Francis George Perrin, okay.
Francis, professional journalist. And then this is the guy, René Claude Schumpeter. And it's liberation, because it literally liberated him. And obviously he went on to create the whole training system for the Atlas prophylax, as it's called, practitioners. And he was in the army and he was training, and they were doing some quite wild game things, and he fell and he dropped on his head, and it fractured the arch of the Atlas C1 vertebra, which actually is halfway up the back of your skull. I thought it was down here near your bottom of your neck. It's not. It's up. And because it doesn't show up on an X-ray, he had some quite difficult times, because he was in so much pain, and he was invalided out 6 months or so many months later as a psychiatric case, very unhappy. Swiss, that's it, he's a Swiss guy. He'd got a Swiss engineer as a friend, and between the two of them, they found out what had gone on and how the Atlas Byrne C1 has been slightly twisted genetically. This is what's interesting. And had it replaced, if you like, and the massage unit, which works on frequency, was designed and made actually in Switzerland by him and his friend, and this is where it started off. So
are you saying that it's not in the neck part then, is it actually so where the little depression is between the skull and the spine, is it further?
Yes, just
it's just there. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm going back a few years now. I have a friend, probably about 2005, and he's very, very psychic. He works at a hostel in Iona.
Oh, lovely.
Iona, in his late 40s, amazing. And I met him at a Crystal Skull weekend over in Ulverston, actually. No, not Ulverston. Bardsey, the malt kiln, Bardsey, that's right. And I went to help out because I knew the guy that was, lady that was running it. And some very nice people there. And there was a break, and I just sort of threw a little fishing rod out, as I do, to see what the response was. And I said something about David Icke. And Mark and his wife then was the only people that responded. And that struck up the friendship, because he's obviously and so anyway, we went up to Ennerdale to do some ceremonies around Ennerdale Water, and that part of the lakes, the North Lakes, is very, very, it's very powerful. Yeah, there's lots of little stone circles and so on. And so wandering along as you do, Penny said, and he does download, he does get messages. I've been told to tell you 3 things, he said, because he knew that if he told me, it'd be out on the big sharer. And I said, oh, what are they, Mark? He said, first of all, the importance of Himalayan crystal salt in the body, right? And he told me, I didn't know. I wouldn't have refined salt anyway, because I thought the less humans messed about with natural things, the better. But I hadn't got a clue how important sea salt is in the body. So I've learned a lot since then. Second thing, he said, the 13th astrological sign, which I was born in the middle of, and that's Ophiuchus. I think we may have mentioned that before, John, if not.
Yes, I don't think we mentioned the name.
Yeah, Ophiuchus. And the third was about the Atlas correction. I said, well, what's that, So I said, well, I'm interested. I said, can you send me some links? I've got a computer and everything up and running. I got back home, and the next morning I saw an email from him. There were the links. I could not get off the computer for hours. I was absolutely mesmerized by it. And I thought, I've got to get it done. And the best article that I read that he sent me the link to, and I think it's still there, is one by, written, it's under the title of The Women Warriors.
Oh, wonderful.
Atlas correction, Women Warriors. And that's the only one that told the story of the genetic engineering, which absolutely fascinated me. And the 5th root race, white Caucasians, which we are, were genetically engineered about 10,000 years ago by the Draco reptilians, who wanted a more intelligent slave race. So we had their intelligence, which is great. Thank you very much. Thank you. You know, bye bye. We don't need you. And when we were created, we were more powerful than our creators because they have no higher emotions. We do, and that is the power of the heart. And so to create like a dumbing down, the T1 vertebra was slightly twisted genetically, 23.5 degrees to the left, which is exactly the same as the Earth tilt on its axis.
I was just going to say that sounds a familiar number. The Earth, right, tilt axis.
No. So what happened, and that disconnected us from Mother Earth really, because when you think about it, you look in the mirror, one hip slightly up, legs shorter than the other, all the problems with spine, neck, you know, the number of people. In fact, my deceased late husband had 2 car accidents, not his fault, a rear shunt, side shunt, and the atlas was twisted round even further, because when I was, I'll go into how, when I had mine done, I found I could check it with dowsing, what's the level of luxation, as they call it, and I got on my chart 20%.
And what does luxation mean, Penny?
Twist. The
twist, okay.
Yeah. It's the actual way that the atlas is slightly out of alignment, which causes we are not aligned with the planet properly, and it doesn't,
on purpose.
Yeah, when I found out as well, when I was checking with dowsing, I went into did a lot of work on it. It caused a lessening in the health and vitality of the pineal gland,
right,
thymus, spleen. Now that wasn't read in, I didn't read that in any of the books, right? And I thought, crumbs, pineal gland, yeah, we don't want that because that's our third eye. Thymus, that's connected to the heart chakra. And also, I wasn't sure about the spleen. I thought, why would that cause a problem with spleen? And then I thought, well, yeah, I looked on the internet. I'm sometimes very fortunate when I'm looking for something, within a very short amount of time, up comes the site that I need. Yeah. And it was talking about the spleen being energized and with bonding with the birth mother. Right, and this is so
the spleen is linked with the oxytocin production, is it?
Something like that. Well, bonding with the birth mother. Now, when midwives now are taught skin-to-skin contact when the baby's born, not some years back, and most people, a lot of people walking around with weak spleens. And then I thought, well, why would the atlas correction, when that's put back into its place, why would that then enhance the spleen? I thought, well, yes, you're bonded with your earth mother.
Yeah,
okay. Your earth mother, honestly, it just sort of came to me. That's why it's so important. You know,
and the oxytocin that I mentioned, I should just say, that's the chemical that's released when mum has given birth and has her baby on her skin for the first time, that they meet. Very, very powerful, beautiful, and all to do with feelings of ecstasy, deep, unconditional love. You don't have to be birthing another human being onto the planet to experience it. But it is the essence of unconditional love, and stimulated in that regard by the birth process. So amazing.
So anyway, when I found out about this, I thought I've got to have it done, because funny enough, 3 or 4 months before I had that, and I went up on the train from where I live in Grange, Kent's Bank, Grange over Sands, up to meet Mark, because his parents, he was with his parents that time, up near Sellafield and up near that area. And of course the coast is gorgeous. I had pain and clicking and crunching when I turned my head from the left to the centre. Left. I thought it was because I'm left-handed and I was carrying a heavy rucksack or something on my left shoulder.
Yeah.
It wasn't. My body was telling me I needed to get this done, and I couldn't wait. I chose a practitioner. There's a lot more now, and she was I knew I was going to forget her name. She doesn't listen to this. She turned out to be a really good friend down in London. She lived down London way. Anyway, I booked my appointment. She did it over 2 days. Luckily, I got a friend in London I could stay with, and went down and had the first treatment, and it was very painful because it's like, we call it the jackhammer. It's like a massage probe, and the vibration of it is what relaxes the muscles and all the deep tissues and ligaments in the neck. And it, literally, she works it around and checks on how you're doing. It takes, the old, basically, if you're very young, and she has a little tiny one for babies and small children that can put it back very, because in Eastern Bloc countries, as we used to call them, the midwives are trained to put the atlas back straight away up.
Oh, really?
When
How
the,
interesting.
not the UK, not
no.
Eastern Bloc countries, the Eastern Europeans,
Wow.
probably, and when the bones are soft. So this is why I think so many poor people in the UK, you often see them, don't they, round-shouldered and looking as though they've got all the cares. So anyway, she was lovely, and when she said, right, it's, I didn't feel it go back. It never comes out again, by the way, when it's back.
Right, great.
Never comes out again. She said, right, Penny, sit up, turn your head to the left, and the pain had gone. The clicking, the crunching had gone. The clicking stopped a little while, but it was incredible. And the next day, she uses some other treatments as well, massage, right? And she's brilliant. Now we have a practitioner up at Cockermouth, Joanna Patterson, who uses Ayurvedic techniques as well. And I really was pushing that out hard, in all the
and what was your experience of the after effects of that treatment?
Amazing. I felt literally I could just walk the world. I could just take off, and absolutely marvelous.
So did it change so it changed your sort of energy levels, did it? Would you say?
Yes, yeah, definitely, because I had this pain.
And what about sort of psychologically and sort of the heart and the spleen? Were you kind of aware of that? I'm kind of interested because we do a lot of things, and sometimes we don't think to reflect back how that impacted us, and I always like to know about that.
I did. I found I was engaged in an awful lot of more research, and also checking people with dowsing, because finding out how much that atlas had been actually moved out of alignment, and also other people from other countries, which they didn't have that, because it's fifth root race white Caucasians that seem to be. So
it's people coming onto the planet in this, not just this millennium, so over the last 10,000 years or longer.
Well, yeah. So it seems, yeah. And I really think that's why people from other countries very often can, with races, and they seem taller. And that is one of the reasons.
Right, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I was fascinated.
I wonder if that's why I'm only 5'3".
I say 5'2", eyes are blue.
Oh, yeah.
They organise events, and Marie Casalini, that's it. She's got a practice now in Harley Street. Lovely French lady. Used to organise the day events here when people could have atlas corrected if they wanted. We had sharings and all sorts of, incredible things.
And so you just had those two. So to get this done, it requires 2 sessions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Two treatments.
What Marie does, Joanna Patterson does up in Cockermouth, you go and have your first session in the morning, and then you go back later in the afternoon to have the second. So it's all in one day.
Right. Okay.
So I can definitely recommend Joanna. She's
and
she uses a lot of Ayurvedic techniques as well.
Yes. Do you think that then, if everybody started having that correction, or their atlas being in alignment, do you think that would change the consciousness of human beings generally? Yeah,
I do. I'm going to do some more research on it, because it's been quite a few years ago that I did a lot of.
Do you think with the current situation and this, suppression of humanity by all these different, methodologies under the umbrella of this so-called virus, do you think that, just another layer of the atlas.
There was a little bit of development to this, which only happened a couple of years ago. I go to the Dr. John Roberts Coatroyd dental practice. He only took on a huge number of amalgam things. So I've got a cat system on my lap. I'm knocking fillings out. This is Phoebe. Oh gosh.
Oh, hello, Phoebe. Hello.
She's a lap cat. Say hello. Wave your paw. Look, she's got still. No, cat's in charge at my house. She's got a brother as well. Yeah, there's gosh, I'm all over white hair. It's this time of year. Yeah, there is quite a lot of other things that have happened. And I was going to Coatroyd House. I've got back to the dentist. Went for just check up and so on, and I've always got on very well with John because he's not just works on the physical level, you know, with every tooth attached to meridians and so on. And I said, and I usually check him out dowsing before I go. And I looked at him, and he'd been through difficult times. We all have, haven't we? With difficult times. And I said to him, John, have you had your atlas corrected? Because I didn't think he had. And he said, no. I said, well, how is it? It is back in place.
Oh, right.
Now, that's interesting because I've got my piece of paper with all my little hieroglyphics on, you know, all my little numbers.
Your dowsing kit.
John, I said, I'm going to check this, but your unconditional self-love had gone up to that level that switched on the inner power, you know, as I call it, sacred light, sacred fire, and sacred consciousness, but you haven't got any belief systems outside of yourself. And I thought, I bet you it's got something to do with that. Went back home, and it has. Now, this is really interesting because when you think of it, to have the atlas put back with the massage can take quite a while, and it is painful. I can't say it isn't, it is. And then to have that suddenly happen almost like on its own with the power of the heart, thinking again, the thymus, it was linked to the thymus, and the spleen, which is there's a very, very good article that I'd recommend about the spleen by a lady called Philippa Dinan, Dinnan. She's a birth trauma specialist, and it's the spleen, the emperor of organs.
Oh, really?
To do with our being psychic. It's an incredible article. And I thought, then this is really, really interesting. So not only can the unconditional self-love to that high level, I'm going out of this dimension, embracing us as our multidimensional, powerful beings who are very valuable and much needed. To have that create the bubble of protection against the 5G and Lord knows what else, but also to have the atlas to be corrected as well. I mean, it's just icing on the cake. It's fantastic. And
I'd be very interested to know, Penny, what these days you might pick up on a dowsing inquiry on my atlas, just to see if there's been any change, if it has got itself righted with a self-love impulse.
About £140 as well. And I didn't begrudge the money. I mean, it costs 18 or more, 20,000 euros to train.
Does it? Wow.
They have to train properly because it's
oh yes, it's
if anything goes wrong, they're in trouble. And I remember when young Mark gave me the information to begin with. He said, luckily, but he said, I had mine done by I forget the name of the guy, but he was training, so he didn't charge. He was practicing. He said, if he'd have charged, he said, I hadn't the money, I'd have mortgaged my house. He said, remortgaged, I would have got the money somehow, because it really is so important. It realigns you with your earth mother. Well, how better?
No, that sounds absolutely fantastic. And it's interesting too, though, isn't it? If we come back to then our creators, I'm not talking about the overarching creator, I'm talking about Dracos. Some people seeing this may not know who they are, but another species, another race, came to Earth, it is said, to mine gold and want to do it themselves. created us out of who knows what, and fashioned us after them. But they didn't have our emotional, our EQ, emotional quotient, or our IQ. And so I'd be interested to know what that does, if anything, to them. Do you think there might be any kind of a reverberation through to their species? Do you think that this is an out there question, because I really don't know, because if they're just using us like like we'd use a cow or a bull to pull a plow, or a horse, and they're not interested in our welfare, they just want us to get the job done, then you can say, well, no, maybe essentially there's not going to be much. But if you take the holistic view that everything is quantum and everything affects every other thing, then I'm quite curious as to how you think their species might be affected by us becoming much more in alignment. Because
I've been fascinated, actually, after learning from reading the Women Warriors article and then checking out the dowsing, how the reptilian DNA is within us.
Yes.
We have had more amount, unless anybody has got family, or they're descended from anybody who's from more of that bloodline, and they can be hybrids. You see, this is, as say, when these from heaven came, and interbred with human women and so on. In the Bible, that's absolutely true. I was finding that there were some beings who had got so much reptilian DNA, it was unbelievable. And they are basically, the world, not all the world leaders, but they are linked up with the hierarchy, or the lowerarchy, as I call it, the pyramid of power. I've got this book as well, because this is another very good one, as you know, David Icke, Children of the Matrix.
Yes, Children of the Matrix.
Yeah, which I remember when I first read it thinking, no, we can't. We are, it is true. We have definitely been created, and we have got this, or we had this reptilian DNA within us, which has been needed, and we've had the intelligence as well. And one thing I always think is stay out of judgment.
Yeah.
Stay out of judgment, because these beings were here, I think, obviously, if they created us, they were here before we were. And they think it's their planet. And the lower vibrational energies that they have been taking, if you like, from humans, it's lessening. I've noticed there's a lot of change that's been going on, like dark energy, dark entities, attachment and possession, demonic entities, attachment and possession, and some, the high levels of reptilian DNA seem to be diminishing, and that's happening.
Yeah,
which is good news. Very good.
Absolutely.
Very big changes at the beginning of this year.
Really? That's when you were picking them up?
Yeah, as well as there were a lot of things like the lunar eclipses and solar and so on, because a lot of it's to do with the planets as well. There's one very good Vedic, I think it's called Vedic astrologer, Johnny Patry, which is worth having a look at, and it all seemed to be linking in, and it was really, really interesting. The thing is, what is I have learned so much is finding out about the beings with large amounts of reptilian DNA have been, the ones that have been difficult. Even in I'm married into a family whose deceased husband had a stepmother, and she was descended from one of these family bloodlines.
Oh, right.
And she had quite a large amount of, as I was picking up, reptilian DNA, and quite a difficult temperament and personality to, to be with.
Well, I certainly think, like no other time, perhaps, that there is a challenge to that old paradigm.
Yes.
And there's always birth pains and pangs going on as the transition goes on, but I am incredibly optimistic and actually really excited about it.
The power of the heart is just incredible. It really is. And I've never stopped, enjoying just learning about how, the toroidal energy field that's created. Oh, my gosh. And the Heart Math Institute, that's worth a look when anybody's got a
Yes, actually, I had looked into their material before as well, and they do a lot, don't they? They're incredible, all of that lovely stuff. And the same with sound as well. I'll perhaps have a look at some sound as well another time, because
5 to 8 frequency.
And so many different frequencies, and I saw a lovely thing on one of the just a posting on Facebook, and it was that the Benedictine monks, not this time, nuns, had recorded something like 7,000 hours of their plain song, which is what a Gregorian chant is, and were putting it out for free. And I thought this was absolutely fabulous, because I don't know if people are aware of what that is, but it's that beautiful sonorous tone with one or two gentle lilting changes in the note structure here and there. And it was the first form of song, as I understand it, the first form of I guess, structured music. Don't hold me to task on that. I'm not a musicologist, but that's what I understand. And it's
the old scale,
beautiful.
The scale that resonates with the sacred geometry of the universe.
And maybe as it's getting later now, Penny, we can just perhaps finish up with talking about the 440 and the 432 set. Yes, that was, and now I forget when, because it was always, so what we're talking about is the level playing field of an orchestra, if you like. It's all attuned to 432 hertz, or was, and then, I don't know, was it during the last war or after? Do you know a bit more about that?
Something, yeah, 19, I forget that year, but it was to do with the link with the Rockefeller. Insisted all Western instrumentalists change their instruments to the scale of dissonance, which is 440 hertz, and it needs to go back. It really does, because the old scale, and one of the guy that's done an awful lot of work on it is Dr. Len Horowitz. I mentioned last week, I can't remember now. Horowitz, because he's actually created something called the 5 to 8 Love Revolution, and I think he's put out something as well about this plandemic, as we call it, recently. So he's worth having a look at online on, I think, YouTube. And also there's another chap called Mark Devlin, who's English, and he's done a lot of research as well. And the book that I have here is called No, it's gone.
Well, whilst you're having, I think I'll just, I'll finish my bit by saying that on the Eclectic Album, which is an album that I produced late 2018 with the lovely Dougie Degnan, who shifted planes on me, the little monkey, far too soon. Anyway, but it's the Eclectic Album is basically an album that has mainly experiences of the spiritual, paranormal, ET, all that kind of communication, and it's about the channeling, download of their music, and not that the songs are all about ET, they're not. There may be one or two, but it's about the expression of their higher self, their creative self through that. And also as well, there are sound bites on the album from the guys giving their pivotal moment of experience, and also one or two little interviews. And anyway, in one of the contributors is Meryl Fankhauser, very well known or quite famous for his Wipeout song that I never heard the name before, but the moment I heard it, I instantly knew it. A surf rock classic. So he's become a bit of a legend himself. Anyway, he was told he did an album called Sounds of Mu or something like that, as in Lemuria. And what had happened was a guy who wrote Alien Rock, a guy called Michael Luckman, who's a music producer, knew Meryl and had recounted a conversation he'd had with a friend of his who lived just by the beach in Malibu. And he had been something like a code breaker in the war or a radio signal man. So he was recognizing signals. That was his skill. And he began noticing a particular sound and frequency coming from the center of the ocean from his perspective. And he thought, well, that's very strange. And he recorded it. It was loud enough. So he gave that recording to Michael Luckman, and Michael Luckman handed it on to Meryl, and Meryl thought, oh wow, this is incredible. He made an album around this Sounds of Mu, and I'm sorry I may have got that title wrong, but it's something similar. And the interesting thing, the point I'm going to make is that he said that he recorded his songs, including those sounds in the background of this strange anomalous sound frequency coming from the middle of the ocean, and it was fine on analog, but when he went to re-record it for digital, he had hell's own job. It wouldn't happen. And in fact, it was quite interesting. He actually said, and also Joanne, sometimes some of the female hosts, because he was on my radio show at the time also telling the story, had some reaction to the sounds or to even him talking about this sort of thing. So that was absolutely fascinating. And he actually he eventually did manage to record it digitally as well. But what he said was interesting. He went and found some of the First Nation folks who knew about this, and they said in eons past it was actually a round structure, and they would, again in eons past, go fishing, and there'd be this sound emanating from this structure. So the structure's still there, but the sea's risen, so they can't go and stand on the top of it and do their fishing anymore. But it was known to those people, those First Nation folks. Isn't that fascinating? I don't know what that means. That it
I remember the name of the book, Janet, that Mark Devlin wrote, The Illuminati Mind Control Through the Music Industry.
Oh, very interesting.
Very, very powerful. Yeah. The title tells a lot, doesn't it? Tells a big story.
It certainly does. Does. Well, Penny, thank you very much. I think I've probably kind of worn you out now. But maybe we can hook up again next time and work through a few more subjects as well. There's so much to cover, but thank you about the information for the Atlas correction. That is fascinating. And before you mentioned, I'd never even heard of it, didn't even know what that was. And so people, I do hope you go and have a look at some of this material, go and do a bit of research yourself, and we'll see you again in episode 5. So it's over and out from the Latte Lounge. Penny Arnold, thank you very much, Pat Byrne. And maybe next week we'll actually get our friend on from Scotland who couldn't join us today. It's just one of those things. Sometimes it doesn't work, but okay, everybody. Thanks for now.
Bye then. Bye.
Thanks, Penny. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Whoops. Here we go.